I had an interesting story that happened maybe about maybe 7 years ago. There was a young man who had left his job, and so he looked for another job. And there he found one as a possibility at a local university. There he applied for the job, and everything looked great, but then they found out he had what is known as a CORI. CORI is also known as a criminal offender record. Came from a very tough area of the Boston area, a very tough city. Wasn't Boston, but was outside of Boston. And yeah, he had gotten in a little trouble, and yes, he came from a tough background, and yes, his mother died when he was young, and yeah, all the ingredients are there. And so he had a criminal offender record. But he was trying to change his life and was being successful in doing so. When the university hiring committee saw that he had an offender record, they said they couldn't hire him. And the reason is because people paid tens of thousands of dollars every year to attend this university, this world-class university in the Boston area. And for that reason, they expect to attend a university where people do not have a criminal offender record. This is what he reported to me. And so they couldn't hire him. I found that so strange because everyone coming out of our universities, especially here in the Boston area, want to change the world. But you can't change the world in a sterile environment. Jesus in today's gospel looks at a group of people who are approaching him, and he sees them like sheep without a shepherd. Well, who are they if they are that kind of people? They're people who are not welcome where those who do feel comfortable are. And so they may be people like the person I mentioned who may have a criminal background. They may be people who have a disease. They may be people who, for one reason or another, are on the outs of the community. And Jesus looks at them and says, they are like sheep without a shepherd. But notice, the next thing he does in this gospel that we're looking at today is he calls his apostles. And the people who were his disciples, he makes apostles. And why? The message is simple. These people who he sees as sheep without a shepherd are the people who his apostles will be called to invite to the new community. That's a powerful message that you and I need to understand. We never know who is in our community because our community is all about inviting people who want to change their lives. What's the very first thing we do after we greet each other in Mass? We say that we are all sinners, and we ask one another to pray for each other. We ask everyone, pray for me. And when we ask them to pray, we say the reason is because we're sinners. And so we admit that we're sinners. I had an experience several years ago where I had a crew from CNN come into our church. And I looked right at them. I said, who are you? They says, well, we're CNN. And I turned to the community. I says, do you want CNN here? And they all said no. And so we kicked them out of the church. And I spoke to the producer the next day. I called him up and I said, you know, you never carry a camera and just walk right into a church because you don't know who's in there and you don't know who might not want to have their picture on a camera because they're turning away from a life that they don't want to be connected with anymore. They want to change their lives. I've been at churches where I've seen someone with a tattoo of a teardrop. Well, tattoo with a teardrop usually means you killed somebody. There are some pretty nasty people who can walk into a church seeking one thing. They want to change their lives and become whole different people and get what you and I have, that joy and that happiness of being followers of Christ. They followed whatever path they followed and realized it got them nowhere. Maybe it was into drugs. Maybe it was into sexual addiction. Maybe it was into alcoholism. Maybe it was into violence. And all of a sudden they realized this has gotten me nowhere. Maybe they just came out of prison. We don't know. All we know is that door is there for anyone who wants to walk in and say, I want to change my life. And that's because Jesus says our church is for also those who are like sheep without a shepherd. I'm always amazed at some of these change the church movements because they're looking for homogenous churches. They're looking for places where they feel comfortable, but they don't want to be challenged by those who they would rather not be near. If you're going to be baptized into the Catholic faith, if you're going to be a part of the Catholic faith, you have to be ready to be challenged by God. And you have to be ready to be in a community where there are people, if you knew their histories, you'd say, I don't want to be near that person. Because that's who we are. You and I say we're sinners. Do you know that people try to silence the Catholic Church based on one simple thing? That they know we're sinners, and so they try to announce to people what our sins are? Do you know that? These are political people who say, we've got the way. It's been the way for 2,000 years. Don't think there weren't people when Jesus' time who weren't turning around and screaming. We can even see it in the gospel where people were saying of Jesus all these awful things. Why? Because they're trying to tell people that those people who hang around Jesus are not the perfect people that we want to be in our nice, cute little white picket fence, nice white house, in the whole bit community. That's what it means to be a person of faith, to be someone who says, if we're going to invite people into our community, we realize that could be just about anybody. God bless you. In the Gospel for Sunday of the 11th of 5, 4, 3, let me make sure this thing is. Okay, are we ready? 5, 4, 3. In the Gospel for Sunday of 5, 4, 3. In the Gospel for the 11th Sunday of Ordinary Time,